Great. Thank you. And so on a plant-based diet, what supplements are essential and where do supplements fit in? And I'll ask that to you, Dr. Pai.
So what we like to look at is supplements are supplementing the diet, not replacing the diet. That's a key thing that I've always been saying to everybody. So we actually tested, like put it to the test. Where everybody says, well, eat healthy. Well, even if they weren't eating healthy, they think they're eating healthy still, right? So what I like to do is I like to check everything. Like just like here's the baseline of what they think is the best diet for, because even if they're not ready to transition, it's like, well, how are you feeling? Well, they're coming to me for a reason. Like otherwise, they won't be coming to me, right? So it's like, and here's their medical list, and here's how many codes and diagnoses. I got arthritis, I got colitis, I got headaches, I got back pain, I've got blood pressure, I got blood sugar problems, I got thyroid problems, I got so I got cancer. So there are all these problems, and it's like, well, how's that working for you? Really, right? So we have to look at like what is, but just saying eating plant based is although it's the foundation, we have to look at like, well, then what are those food triggers? What are the ones even of the plant kingdom that's causing inflammation in them? What is their deficiencies? How is their microbiome functioning and all? Because that's how you individualize. Otherwise, what happens is 80% of people will have improvement of almost all their symptoms, and you'll see parameters get better: blood sugar, blood pressure, weight, etc. Even the cancer, everything gets better 80%, but 20% won't get better. Why? Because that's the individualizing of the diet, of the nutrition of that. So when we look at supplements, then we have to look at like not to say, oh, this is good for everybody. Now, certain things are good for everybody, like vitamin D, right? Now, if they have it natural levels from the sun, all power to them. But we like to get them into a targeted goal. Our goal is like to be around between 60 and 100. That's what the data says. Some people a little bit higher. If they have chronic diseases, cancer, or autoimmune, maybe around 70 or so. But this is what, because that's the data shows it's more for immune system beneficial, like a biomarker that we can follow, and and it's really inexpensive and easy to take. But then we give like natural anti-inflammatories like the bosmeric as a daily for inflammation, because we want to, even if someone's eating an anti-inflammatory diet, they still usually have a pro-inflammatory lifestyle. Right, most of us are on their legs or on their feet. They're having hardworking jobs, and so instead of taking again a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, we want to give something that's safe, clinically effective, that's potency and pure, and delivers also a variety of other benefits. So, I don't look at like, oh, you need to have this whole list of things. What we like to look at is like, what can we do to help your inflammation? What can we do to help your immune system? And then anything else that's deficient, then we will tell you what foods, because that's what all the testing and everything will tell us to do. We teach them the skills of how to eat that way. And then like what Julieanna's talking about, it's like, how do you deal with really the biggest challenge is like cooking, access, and the sociology and psychology of all this, because the stressors of foods, and even telling people that they need to eat healthier is a stress to them, right? And we were just having a little discussion before we came on, and she lives in LA, which is fantastic for a lot of options to go out to eat. I live in Albuquerque, which is almost a nightmare to have plant-based options. So it's a challenge of where that person's at, because sometimes they can say, hey, why don't you go here, try this, and they're going to go, oh my god, I didn't know the food was so good, I can easily do this. And when you don't have that kind of experience, then sometimes it's harder to convince them, right? So that's why we have to then provide as many tools as possible. But I don't look at like, you need to take this. We like to individualize that, because then it's like that's what they really need to take. Otherwise, it's just the sell again.
Thank you. And Juliana, what are your thoughts on supplements? Which do you think people on a plant-based diet need to take, and supplements in general?
Yeah, very similar views. And I I prioritize certain nutrients that we need to like think about, like B12, vitamin B12.
Sure.
Anyone on a plant-based diet, or anyone, no matter what you're eating over the age of 50, has to supplement with vitamin B12. I don't recommend using fortified foods because it's unreliable, and the consequences of not supplementing with B12 are so potentially risky, like the potential for irreversible neurological damage that you don't find out until it's too late. It's not worth it. So the cheapest, most effective, safest way to avoid vitamin B12 deficiency is to supplement. And that's really important. So B12. Vitamin D, because vitamin D is a fat soluble nutrient, I do have my clients test to know the dosing if necessary, because it's not like vitamin B12 where it's water soluble, and if you have too much, you'll just excrete the excess. Vitamin D is definitely important, but I want to make sure we look at blood work for that one. I make sure everyone's getting their iodine. That's become interesting of late because of all the fancy salts that are not iodized, and we're seeing goiters come back, which I never thought was imaginable since I was in grad school, but I'm seeing those a lot with thyroid issues. So iodine is something we need to be aware of. And zinc is something we need to be aware of, especially it's even come into light since the COVID and everything happened. So more people I'm kind of having a lot of people supplement with zinc as well. I am still recommending the long chain omega-3 fatty acid, the microalgae, docosahexaenoic acid, the EPA and DHA, both, because we don't know still if there's any repercussions of having lower levels of EPA and DHA in the bloodstream. And no matter how much, I do recommend the ALA, the plant forms, flaxseed, chia seed, hemp seed, tofu, walnuts to get the ALA, but we're not converting as much on a plant-based diet. So I am still recommending the long chain EPA, DHA, microalgae supplements to most of my clients. So I mostly have most of my clients, generally speaking, take a multi, and then we kind of look at the details in lab work and make other adjustments as needed.
So if I can further answer on that to carry that further, because I want to make sure I don't forget about the B12 as well. Yes, anybody on the plant-based diet. But here's the interesting thing is because since we've been testing nutrition now for like 25 years, and especially in the last 15 years looking at it, most people coming into my practice are not plant-based and they still have deficiency, right? So it's kind of a misunderstanding or misnomer. Like, yes, plant-based people should be taking a B12, if not even a lot of the Bs itself, because they're just kind of depending on the foods that quality that we're getting. However, people on a standard American diet are just as low. And the reason being is because their animals that they're eating is also deficient, right? Because 99% of animal protein is factory farmed. So they're not eating their microorganisms that create the B12 because they're all factory farmed. Right now, if we actually eat farm to table, like traditionally, like way back when, there was a little bit of these microbes that would actually give us B12 because the carrots weren't washed correctly, for example, and there's a little bit of dirt in the food kind of thing. Now everything has to be sterilized because of animal protein contamination from factory farming into regular farming to our lettuce and tomatoes, etc. But we have to look at is that when we look at the nutrition, is like, yes, zinc is good. Let's test it. When we look at like vitamin A, C, E, CoQ10, glutathione, how are you detoxifying? All your B vitamins, not just B12 and folic acid, which most primary care doctors do. We want to look at all of them because if someone has neuropathy, what about your vitamin B1? And then what form of vitamin B1 should we give them? For example, magnesium, zinc, molybdenum, now omega-3s, 6, 7s, and 9s, right? So the interesting thing, there is this misunderstanding that was perpetuated in the industry about people not converting or people, you can't get enough, especially plant-based, you can't get enough omega-3s in your diet. But when we test it, we actually test the ALA, the EPA, and DHA, but we also have the ability to test the conversion enzyme. So there is a certain percentage of people that will have an impaired delta-6 desaturase enzyme. And in those patients, definitely we have to provide them with a plant-based omega-3. In fact, I was the first person to actually consult and create, was it 2012? Plant-based omega-3, right? Now it's like a big thing, but anyways, that's how old it was going back then. But the idea is that we used to think, and even myself, like, that's why I was consulted to create the products, is everybody needed it because we were sold that. But what we were sold is because the industry that was actually fish oil companies, and that's what they were pushing fish oil, is because people eat a high omega-6 diet, which is pro-inflammatory. If it's too high, we have some, but we don't want too much, and we're not eating enough omega-3. So the idea is like just to flip that ratio was just to sell a product that would be more anti-inflammatory. And now we understand that we want to go plant-based because of the sustainability issues and the other issues with fish. That's the whole section in my book talking about that. But what we didn't know is that there was a subsection that they took and they said nobody's converting. That's why you need it. But that's not true. So when we test our patients, if they come back and they have the enzyme, and I can measure and their EPA and DHA is great, then I'm like, yeah, flax, chia, hemp, walnuts, great. You can have that all you want. It has protein, has fiber. You're going to get the omega-3s. You're going to get all the brain health, heart health, inflammation lowering, and reduction benefits, but you don't need an omega-3. But if those people are impaired, you better be taking it because you can eat all those things you're not converting. So we like to really now, 10 years ago, we didn't have the ability to do this. So the recommendation is not bad. More omega-3 is helpful, but the idea is that when we're looking at getting targeted responses, then we want to know, because a lot of people are like, I'm already taking 8 to 10 pharmaceutical medications. I'm already taking, 10 to 12 or 15 supplements from my healthcare other healthcare providers. We like to look at what do you really need and then target those and then really surround everything from the diet and then build on targeted things that your diet is either not able to get or you have a specific health condition that we need a little bit higher doses or something more specific.
And how would someone go about testing for the enzyme for conversion?
So that's actually part of the nutrition test that we do. It's part of a pathway. And so, for example, here's another thing. A lot of people, and Julieanna, this would probably be very specific for her clients since she's dealing with a lot with weight loss. Because, here's a challenge with even the plant-based diet patients who are also trying to lose weight is that we were sold, oils being like super healthy, right? Now, they're not super bad, but they're heavy, dense caloric foods. And so a lot of people like are pouring olive oil on everything and not understanding like, that's just liquid calories. And so when we're measuring then their omega 9s, we see almost every patient now coming in and they're super high. This is like olive oil, avocado oil, and it's like they're just using too much. Now, it's not going to affect their lipids. It's not going to be dangerous. But when they're looking at a weight issue, it's like they're just consuming this, hundreds and hundreds of calories a day, not knowing, because they're like, hey, I'm only eating this, I'm only eating that, but they're putting in the pan, they're putting on the salad, they're putting in, mixing in all these other things. Not understanding that's calories, 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 and they're having 1,000 calories of oil in a day on top of the food, right? So we like to look at, some of that is a guidance, because some people say, "Oh, I don't use much," and I'm like, "Yeah, you're way off than what you need. You can cut down." Now, some people are on the other side; they're on the extreme of this, like no oil, the other extreme of the plant-based world, right? And it's like you need some, right? Because again, the people in the blue zones, they're not zero either. There's no salt, no sugar, no oil. But again, there's these extremes because American lifestyle and restaurant industry and fast foods and all is heavy over here, and then there's also an extreme side over here being restrictive. We want to find like what is the physiological parameters that the patient needs, and then are they converting? Are they having too much omega 6s? So if someone's animal protein based, then they're gonna have a lot of dairy, they're gonna have a lot of meats, they're gonna have a lot of omega 6s. But also if they're plant-based and they're eating French fries all the time as well, they're getting all these vegetable oils, we can also see a lot of inflammation from there. So it's a really nice thing to look at so that we can actually guide the patient, because a lot of people, that as Julieanna will know for sure, and like me or anybody who's working in these panels, is that what a patient reports can be completely different than what the reality is happening, right? Because everybody's perception is like, I'm eating healthier than I proclaim, right? And that's just with all dietary studies is the hard fact of the truth in reporting, right? Because nobody wants to say I had more chocolate chip cookies or a donut, whatever, right? Like, so there's a little bit of that issue. And, there's a guilt issue, like, well, maybe I only had this many nuggets at the store, or only this many pieces of chicken from the bucket or whatever. So there's a little bit of the diet histories. It's kind of, but when you actually test that person, then you can let them know, because sometimes it takes a big burden off of them. Like sometimes they're thinking like, oh, I'm doing too much. I'm like, you know what? It's fantastic. You don't have to worry about that. Then it takes a huge stress off their life. But I'm like, you need to eat more of this. Oh yeah. And then these are the foods that have that nutrients that are highest in there. So you're getting your phytonutrients, you're getting your antioxidants, you're getting your fiber, you're getting your protein, you're getting your, all these other benefits rather than even just taking a supplement. So that's kind of how we approach that.
Great. Thank you. So Julieanna, how do you reconcile the differences between nutritional advice given by various health experts and dietitians? Right. It's all over the place.
Well, that's a huge question.
It is. And by the way,
that was kind of loaded, by the way.
Before I just throw it out there, because I know
I'm the only one you should listen to.
Both you guys have a lot to say. So we have about 10 more minutes before we need to wrap it up. So just keep that in mind when you answer.
In a nutshell, the hardest question you just asked me is that there are so many approaches. There are so many approaches, and there's so many approaches to eating healthy. What is healthy? And compare, we all have biases. We all have inherent biases that there's no way around. Even a scientific method can't get us to interpret a study differently without some bias underneath. No matter what we want to think about ourselves, we are human. Everyone here, we're all human. And so I don't know. I look at the literature. My clients have predictably lost 0.4 to 0.8 pounds a day of body fat with my program. I've been doing it so generalizably and so predictably for almost 20 years now that no one can unseat what I've learned. And I am so open-minded and curious to learn. Even these new weight loss meds, I'm so open to seeing how this is unfolding and like understanding where things fit in for different people, and knowing that there's a lot of information, there's a lot of messaging, but there's so much mixed messaging and there's so much mismessaging, which I think is really harmful. And I find myself, I always call myself a nutrition myth debunker, because all day long I'm debunking myths that people are being bombarded with, on social media and from their friends and family. And so I guess the answer is you could do your best. You learn, you read the literature, you have to be as analytical as you can. I don't like the idea of finding a guru and following anything they say, because that could be harmful too. So my role as a healthcare provider is to stay open to the new science and everything that comes out, the new ideas, the new trends, my clients' concerns, and most importantly, the humanity, and knowing that there should be no guilt or shame or anything in this industry of trying to eat healthier and do best for yourself. But you just want to be there to guide people in the best way that you possibly can. And based on, as obviously you want to keep it as close to evidence-based or all evidence-based as you can, but science changes too. Nothing is forever. Nothing is official, except for, I was just saying at dinner that there's no such thing as, there's absolutely no such thing as absolutes, including in health.
Okay, thank you for that. And Dr. Pai, your thoughts on the subject?
So again, it's a headache, right? Because every day there's this misinformation. But remember, the industry, which is all industries, right? From the supplement industry to the drug industry to the weight loss industry to hospital systems to insurance companies to fast food industries. Like in my book, I even have a section going into this in detail where, the top 5 insurance companies own 100 million. This is like in 2016. So it's even more now. They had $100 million in stock in each fast food restaurant. So each of the top 5 companies have 100 million of McDonald's, Burger King, this, that, because they're getting you this way, they're getting you that way. So like the system is kind of rigged. And I always tell people, you're not here by default, you're here by design, right? This has all been marketed. I mean, we're all guilty of being marketed to, and we cannot not be marketed to, right? So we all grow up. We had a food pyramid, we had the songs. Everybody like, so we all know what. I can say a phrase that's been marketed from the food industries, and we all can answer the rest of the phrase, right? That's how powerful it has been, and that becomes a cultural norm, becomes a psyche norm, and it becomes a worldwide phenomenon of the standard American lifestyle and diet. So it is hard to dispel that. But at the end of the day, you have to look at the science and the true evidence. Not everybody is evidence-based, although I know there's a lot of people who write books, and then a lot of people, who are not on this program, thankfully, but who are popular. But again, followers and the amount of likes doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, is like, are these people seeing patients, and can they show the benefits, or do they have people? Everybody can have this quick fix, but I'm a science guy at the end of the day, so it's like you can't. I follow the laws of nature, right? That if you look at any kind of traditional medicine, which I've been trained in and looking at, like Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, these things are thousands of years. Western medicine is really new. And even from my residency 30 years ago, more than half the drugs that I came out when I was a resident are no longer in the market. They've been pulled off. Right. So we all think like these are like, oh, we're great. But they don't even know how these drugs work yet. They don't even know the side effects. Right. But that's just how it is. It's the latest and greatest. And so like, you can't biohack the body, although there's even conferences now on biohacking the body. You have to follow the laws of nature, follow the laws of science. And it does take some time. These are lifestyle changes. Everybody wants an overnight fix, right? It's a lifestyle practice. Even for myself, even for Julieanna, it's a lifestyle practice. Every day we're still making better decisions and try not to make a worse decision, right? It's not like, oh, we get it and we're so great, and it's not like that. It's like anybody else who's a professional. If you see a professional athlete, we see them on the court or in the game for 15 minutes or 20. Wow, they're spectacular. But they're practicing every single day when you don't see them for a year or years and years and years. So it's a lifestyle practice. So a lot of people have this pressure, I think, now with social media, that it has to be instant. And that's why when they do these drugs of any kind right now, it's like to get them over the fix, get them over the hump, and then quickly before the Academy Awards, I can lose weight. But what we want to look at is, what's the long-term benefits? Like, how are you going to have this investment? It's like putting money into a good mutual fund or a stock fund and seeing it grow over time, not this wild stock trading where it's going to go up and it's going to crash tomorrow. And that's kind of what social media is doing right now. It's kind of playing with these people's fears, is playing with, something that's controversial. And that's why, like, I want to just always be focusing now on, like, let's just focus on what are the positive things that people can do. Julieanna's talking about same thing, about behavioral changes and those kind of things. And then let's start with that rather than trying to debunk something else. I mean, we have to do it every day in our practices because people are coming in and say, oh, I saw this, I saw that. But then at the end of the day, once you understand how the body works, once you understand nutrition, once you understand, what's an inflammatory food and not inflammatory food, what affects the microbiome positively or negatively, then the answer just lies in itself. Like, you don't have to be convinced. That's just what it is. But the idea is that getting people to get there will take some time.
All right, great. Thank you. So we have a question from one of our audience members. So Ali D, please state where you're from and ask your question.
Yeah, I'm from Southern California, and I'd like to have your opinion, doctor, on a critical vitamin D level of between 7 and 16. I'm out in the sun in the garden daily. I don't use sunscreen. And I'm on 2 prescriptions of 50,000 units each. So that's 100,000. And I take 5,000 daily. So it's 135,000 I take every week. And this has been going on for years, and I can't get the doctor to do anything else but just keep giving me these prescriptions, and I'm worried about my health.
Okay, so a couple aspects of that. Number one is that a lot of times when they write a prescription for vitamin D, you have to make sure it's vitamin D3, not vitamin D2. Even though they write vitamin D3, the pharmacy has the ability to change it to D2 because it's cheaper, and they can do that without telling the doctor. So that's one issue. There's a little bit of an absorption issue with D2 and D3. Number two, what Julieanna said before is that vitamin D, A, D, E, and K are fat soluble vitamins. It absorbs 60% better with fat. So like a little bit of avocado, a little bit of nut butter, a little bit of, anything like that, that's a little healthier fat. You want to have it with that meal that will help uptake the absorption. Now, when you're taking that many doses, and that was originally Dr. Hollick, who's the father of vitamin D, when he wrote the article coming out, it was just a suggestion, 50,000 once a week for 8 weeks, right? What we didn't know is that usually it went up and then people stopped taking because that's all he said, and then it went back down, right? So that's why you're 5,000 daily. But if you're taking it, even you're taking with fat, even if you're taking a D3 and it's still that critically low, which it is very low, then what we would have to look at is there's something wrong with the microbiome. There's going to be some kind of increased intestinal permeability problem, which is a malabsorption, kind of a leaky gut kind of thing. And something is causing that dysfunction because you are taking, if you're taking that, it should be higher than that, even with the 5,000 I use. Even getting the sun. Now, some people just don't absorb it as well in the sun. Some people in my patients, they can have fantastic, their vitamin D is 90 and they're just, they just get sunshine doing gardening. And I'm like, you don't need supplementation. But what I would do is if I were to see you, if you were to, do a consultation, then we would look at like exploring, like why is your body not able to raise those levels, even though you're on doses that should be at least right now 40 or 50 minimally with that much taking it for that period of time, taking both. But that's definitely something wrong with the body's absorption of it rather than you're taking something wrong or the dose is wrong.
All right. And Julieanna, in 1 minute or less, any thoughts on vitamin D and what may be Ali D's issue?
Oh no, that was perfect answer. I support that answer completely. That is a really, I have not heard those situations. I mean, there's a lot of things that can get in the way of sun absorption, like excess body fat, darker skin requires more time in the sun, but it sounds like you're doing everything right. So I think looking at the microbiome is a really brilliant suggestion.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Well, that wraps up our time together. So thank you so much for all the wonderful information that you shared. And I look forward to your presentations later in the week. So if we could unmute the audience so they can say thanks.
Thank you so much.
Blessings.
You're
Thank you.
both
It was
awesome.
wonderful. I learned so much.